Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everyone. How are you? I hope you guys doing great. So, in this occasion, I would like to present to you about one of my research paper for language training center in English for paper presentation class. So the title that I take is about Islamophobia in the United States of America post 9/11 terror attack. So my name is Mahsa Kaulika. My student number is 2018 051 0062. So before we jump to the discussion, here I want to tell you about the outline of today's presentation. The first is introduction, second is literature review, the third is research method, the fourth is finding, and the fifth is discussion and also conclusion. So in introduction part, I would like to tell to you about the background of the issue that I take in this presentation, which is about the 9/11 tragedy. So on September 11, 2001, a group of terrorists hit twin towers of the World Trade Center building in New York City, United States of America. This group of terrorists hijacked a plane and dropped the plane into the uh, World Trade Center and then the U.S. Defense Building at the Pentagon. They also dropped another plane in Pennsylvania. So totally, there were 4 planes were hijacked by a total of 19 terrorists that declare comes from the Middle Eastern countries. So basically, this terror attack, which known as 9/11 tragedy, because it is precisely happened on September 11, became Black history not only for United States but also for all of citizens around the world, especially for those who live in the Middle East countries. So since this incident, most of US citizens regard the Muslim as a radical group that have to be feared of, because since this tragedy, whereas the group of terrorists came from Middle Eastern countries and they were Muslim, so people's perception against Muslim is very bad at the time. So since the people perception against Muslim is very bad, so bad treatment by non-Muslim societies, such as discrimination, harassment, and also violence against the Muslim, and the number of this issue continue to increase over the time. And even today, after nearly 2 decades of incident 9/11 passed, the bad stigma given by non-Muslim societies always followed Muslim society in the United States, even though some people were not indoctrinated by the word Islamophobia on their head. So the next section is about the literature review. So according to the European Muslim Initiative for Social Cohesion, or EMISCO, in 2010, they give the explanation and defines Islamophobia as a form of intolerance and discrimination motivated with fear, mistrust, and hatred of Islam and its adherents. Another scholars also say that according to Sardar, Shira, and Jordan in 2019, Islamophobia can be simply understood as a view generated by unreasonable fear of Muslim or Islamic practices that represented in various ways, such as through interactions conducted with hatred, either directly or indirectly, through the media, arts, or other forms of expression, such as in direct expression. Somehow, non-Muslim society talk by themselves the bad words regarding towards the Muslim society. So about the 9/11 tragedy, deadliest terror attack which happened on September 11, 2001, when at the time for commercial U.S. airlines were hijacked by a group of terrorists from the Middle Eastern countries, killing approximately 3,000 of people, which this tragedy became the Black history of America. Since at the time, Kiger in 2019 states that United States of America governments strongly condemns the act of terrorism. So they do many things to prevent the act of terrorism. So in near future, there is no more terror attack that hit the United States of America. So Calibi in 2011 also assumed that the tragedy of 9/11 terrorist attack changed America and its people's perspective towards Islam. It is supported by the article as reported by Time in 2010. The plan that built the Muslim Center in New York City, where this location is near from the World Trade Center building, invited a large scale of demonstration from among non-Muslim society. Some opponents are indeed apprehensive that the planned construction of an Islamic cultural center will displace the families of nearly 3,000 victims who died in the attacks of the World Trade Center or at 9/11 tragedy occurs. The third part is the research method. In this research, the author will use the qualitative method by inviting several sources to be interviewed and also using the data and document-based analysis method, and also the internet as a source of insight and a source of information. So the qualitative method used by the other help the other help the research process by knowing how the views of people that once lived in the United States of America and some international relations student on their insight regarding about the Islamophobia itself. So here the other want to know about the people's perception. Starts from the a friend of mine that once living in U.S. In the past 9/11 in several years after 9/11 tragedy happened, and also some international relations students that have that concern in these United States of America issues, especially in Islamophobia. So these are the research method. So the first, through this method, the researchers prepare some questions that needed first to complete the data in the study to that given to the interviewees. And the second is the researcher conducted an interview session with several sources using a phone call through the WhatsApp. And the last method is by recording the findings, recording the discussion, and notes the findings, then sort of which one that needed to be put and that need to not be put. So the discussion that will create it will way much more effective and efficient, and the question point are answered maximally. So in the next part, we are on finding part. I divided into three findings that I found. So the first is how about non-Muslim society threats Muslim society post 9/11 incident. So at the time, people were suspicious and somehow will often immediately will accuse the Muslim society. Since 9/11 tragedy shows that the terror attack have the association with Muslims, so the Muslim society get the bad impact, so they will accused by non-Muslim society as that the Muslim society is associated with the terror attack of 9/11. The fear of Muslim, which brought by Islamophobia, made Muslim people living in the United States of America after 9/11 tragedy get different treatment from the surrounding community. Somehow, Muslim society that living in US have to maintain themselves to stay at home, because if they go outside, the people will tell about the bad words, so it will bring the negative affirmation towards the Muslim society at the time. So they will remains to uh, keep themselves safe, and also makes the situation is not getting worse. And the second is about how the United States of America as a superpower country use its power to influence other country about the Islamophobia. As we know that United States of America is very very strong in spreading the idea of Islamophobia, because uh, back then in war era, where United States of America have a lot of allies, which in a pro side with US, whenever they reject the idea of Islamophobia, they will assume as the country that support the act of terrorism. So United States of America post 9/11 tragedy start to create the foreign policy that is very strong, that basically it is focusing on to prevent the act of terrorism. So through the foreign policy they created, America sees Islam as an idea that is expected to emulate the US in near future. So through the foreign policy, it is proposed is to put the bad stigma against Islam and to avoid the power of Islamic leadership in the future. So the United States of America is always continues to spread the Islamophobia, because they don't want Islam to continue to develop, because if Islam takes the lead, it is feared that the various terror attack will occur again in near future, as well as what happened during the 9/11 tragedy. And the third finding that I got is about the current situation in United States of America in perceiving Muslim people. Is basically about discussing about the current situation on uh, how they see Muslim nowadays. So from the from the research process that the authors take, it is found that the current situation of Muslim society has improved if we way much better if we compare to 1 to 2 years after the 9/11 tragedy occurred in, especially in U.S. 44th President era Barack Obama administration, whereas he began to improve his foreign policy, the U.S. foreign policy under his administration, which was more their approach is show that they're more pro towards Islamic friendly policy, where he proposed to gain Muslim support at the time. So it is a good process, especially in America, because as we know, as when back in Bush era, how people see Muslim and how the wave of Islamophobia is very great at the time, but later on in Barack Obama administration, the situation is way much better. So the Muslim society that previously have had to pass the scary night because they don't even go outside. They can socialize with the society uh, near them, and even doing the religious activity, they have to do it at home, because if they do it outside, the people will afraid. The people will tell about the bad words. The people will even they will do bad things to the Muslim society. So current situation is getting better day by day. So in discussion part, the other uh, after the explanation in finding part, basically is supported by the previous studies. One of which is supported by research conducted by Lauren P. Sheridan, in which she found that rate of discriminations against women is increasingly rapidly. And she also added that the major world events such as 9/11 terror attack will affect the stereotypes and also prejudice of a group against minorities greatly. And this is very clearly shown by the phenomena of Islamophobia, which can spread rapidly to all corners around the world, which creates a new stereotype that Muslim as a minority need to be feared of and also have to be avoided. So it will basically makes the Muslim society uncomfortable. And discussing on how the U.S. used its power in mobilizing and spreading the idea of Islamophobia to its allied countries, which is projected to inhibit and even reducing the possibility of Islam to lead. This is also supported by a book written by Sayyid as an Abdul Karim Fakil, which they state that Islamophobia is brought by U.S. besides only aiming to fulfill their national interests. Islamophobia also very controversial because uh, basically it creates the political polemic among the nations. So back to the past 9/11, the post 9/11 era, the world is very controversial because some of the Western countries support the idea of Islamophobia, while the Asian countries and also the Middle Eastern countries, whereas the Muslim was majority there, they will refuse the idea of Islamophobia because even in Islam itself, the terror attack not is not legal. So it is something that should be avoided. Even Islam never state that terror attack uh, is legal. So basically, the idea of Islamophobia itself is just biased because the act of terrorism only done by the terrorists, and the terrorist is not Muslim. So it creates a political polemic at the time. So here we are in conclusion part, which is the last part of today's presentation. So the terror attack of September 11 caused a paradigm shift on how non-Muslim societies perceive Muslim society as a radical group that has to be feared of. This study also provides the insight regarding on how the impact of Islamophobia has very clearly effects on Muslim communities' life throughout the U.S. socially at the time. It is recommended that further studies might use the quantitative study as research methodology to gain more data, but by giving a questionnaire to the wider community about how their views in assessing Islamophobia itself, where issues regarding this matter are increasingly becoming an interesting topic. So I think that's all for me. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys doing great. Stay healthy, stay hydrated, and don't forget to wear your mask because we are in this pandemic situation. And bye bye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.